Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Black Ice for Hearts of Iron 3. Of course, we're playing as Germany. A couple of interesting developments. One thing I didn't know, Spain has not only joined the Axis, which I knew that, of course, but has actually joined the war. I noticed that down here is that they had invaded this little bit of France, and France has turned those troops over to Britain, and we're going to attack there. It also seems like, again, now the British, the Allies, whatever, are retreating out of Africa, again, as opposed to pushing back against me. And as if you remember from previous episodes, Brazil has invaded down here. We are still invading Accession Island, but looks like we're going to do well there. And one thing I haven't been doing well is part of the bomber situation here. As you know, I like to micromanage things, but I don't like to micromanage everything. Maybe a good idea for a co-op, though I don't know if there's enough to do, would be to have somebody else run the Air Force. Now, you know I very much like to use naval bombers because they're very flexible. They don't get, like, you know, German big super powerful fleet trapped here, and if I try to get them out, they sink. You can just fly them somewhere else, and they can have significant influence on things out to sea, and they can't. And just as a general rule of thumb, and of course things vary by the various techs, generally speaking, the naval bombers, and now this wasn't, it was a good long-range aircraft, sort of weakish structurally. It was made to do transatlantic flights early on, and so, you know, the Germans, who are very good at designing things, designed it to be very lightweight, but loading it down with lots of fuel, lots of bombs, and then landing it, because not always every mission you don't drop all your bombs or whatever. They had, I think, more crack up on landing than actually shot down. We just got another follower on Twitch. So that's what that noise was. Thank you. So, but it could have been probably just mainly the where the wings and the fuselage attach, and a bar kind of going across that thing to where the landing struts are would probably have solved much of that problem with it. But I've definitely seen, like, photos. Recently I saw a photo of well, I think it was a B-17, but it was one of the good American bombers, I think, that sort of in the before you get to the actual tail, you know, with the vertical stabilizers and the little horizontal wings in there, but behind the main set of wings, so just sort of going out there, there was like a gash running horizontally through that looked like it went through almost half of the width of the aircraft there, and that was a mid-air collision. I think a German fighter collided with it in mid-air, and the thing made it back to England or wherever it returned, because it was on the ground and the pilots were all looking at the damage. This aircraft could not have taken that level of a hit and make it back to base. It just was not that strong. It was built to be a passenger liner, converted into a good long-range aircraft that could carry bombs and whatever and attack convoys. Obviously, you also have other types of bombers that can be naval operation, but generally these are the better ship attacking aircraft. U-boats are generally the better submarine attacking aircraft, and generally better submarine spotters. So that's why I like to mix them, because I am looking for British submarines as well as I would look for American submarines, but I don't rarely ever see any out here. As well as going after fleets. But one of the good things is their ability to, and again it varies, but to be able to spot surface ships and submarines. Now, because if you put 20 ships in a in a group in a convoy in this area of sea, that's still hard to find, especially in the pre-radar age. But even in the radar age, it's still precisely spotting it. Knowing if you don't know that it's there, you got to take a lot of flying around to do it. So just because an aircraft within this sort of model flies to here and then flies out doesn't mean that it spots whatever that we may sort of kind of see in ships, moving around like this. We may sort of kind of know that it's there. Just looking to see if I can see. These are all Spanish, so of course we know where our allies are. But that we may spot that something's sort of there on the map, but they may not be able to actually engage it. These guys are definitely the thing to engage it. What is also, and as historically as they would do, particularly in the Mediterranean, is use conventional bombers to do the actual main amounts of attacks on, well, even submarines. And this goes for both the Allies and the Axis. The reason they mainly used conventional bombers for the attacks is because they had a lot of them, because that was the main thing produced. I'm over, as a percentage thing, overproducing naval bombers and flying boats. They mostly produced conventional bombers of various types, and of course they would be used to do naval attacks, and can do so quite well. And what I have been doing is leaving various air units. I think there's some over here that are now going, that are just sort of been sitting here because I haven't really needed them anywhere. Don't really need them in India, and India is bereft of, there is an airbase here, but is bereft of a lot of air bases. Should have a bunch more. The Black Ice guys ever get bored and want to just add a bunch of air bases, they should do so to India, as well as other places. And so these guys should have been moved, have a bunch moved that are previously for supporting. Though I also noticed, look at what happened. The Italian Navy is sitting here, and the army of about 20 plus divisions has come ashore in Brest for a holiday. But because I had been supporting the Wales invasion with some air power, so I'm leaving that there. But I'm moving a bunch of the other air power here because this got munched again. I think I had it up to 4 or 5 motor torpedo boats, and so I'm adding a bit more naval air power, but sending a bunch of bombers and close air support type aircraft into this region to pound whatever. Though I don't know whether, because these guys were just operating in here, whether these guys were hit by aircraft or surface fleets. I'm not sure, or subs or whatever. So I'm going to support, going to keep the these guys are coming. I'm going to rebase up to here, big enough base to hold them to here. Main group that I'm hoping, and the way it should work is that, and I know it does often, is that these guys will get in, find and engage an enemy, and then as the action goes on, the other bombers will join in that action. So hopefully we can just clobber whatever is there. And just sort of those plans, and what I have not been doing as well as could or should. So, okay. That is that. Let's continue this. Oh, good. There was a sort of small holdout of French troops up here, which didn't have this. But we have control over the Mediterranean, which we already sort of had, but I guess I don't know. Good, we defended there, we've won in there. Finland, we give them, yes, you can have some rare materials. Not a lot. Spain, now that I know you're at war, yes, you may have rare materials. And I have the carrier-based fleet here, carrying a bunch of Africa Corps units up to other parts of Africa here to potentially deal with these guys. And the Brazilians, though they were originally heading up to deal with the British. Oh, what technology is this? A naval ground crew training. Yes, we're at 34 and 30, or 43, I mean. Okay, but we want to spread it around a little bit more. Forward air control, frontline targeting, fire ground control. Yeah, that would be good. Radar impacts. Yes. Okay, HMS Glorious is lost. Guessing to the British. Okay, Danish People's Defense. It was a minor grouping of Danish. Schalberg Corps formed in 43. It was made up of civilians, some of whom were expected to provide financial backing. Okay. So we get some Danish collaborationist types. Spain joins the Axis. This is an event that fires when Spain joins the Axis from Thierry. I don't we don't want this anymore, and I'll live without that and that. Think about this a second. How do I want to put this? Not at this point in the game. You know, Germany ascendant, defeated the Soviet Union, you know, taking South Africa. It's quite reasonable, in my opinion, for Spain at this point in the game to have joined the Axis, even joined the war. That's generally what you're seeing. But I don't, and for a while it's been in Hearts of Iron, or way too easy to get, like, fascist, as they call it. It was nationalist Spain, but fascist Spain in the Hearts of Iron 4 to join the Axis. Just way too hard, because Franco did not want to join the Axis. I'm not sure Franco's feelings on Mussolini. Franco did not like Hitler. And there, you know, you got to remember, Franco was not a fascist. Franco was a nationalist. There is a difference. There is a big difference. A nationalist is a right-wing statist. Yes, they like the state. They're right-wing. And because you got to remember, right-wingers don't necessarily like fascists. Because, see, fascists are, what are they? Oh, a type of socialist. And I can sort of use they're a type of national socialist, though I don't mean like Nazis, because again, as you know, I define the two differently. But they are, and they are a type of socialist, though they don't, of course, fascists don't believe in, they believe in, you know, private ownership of the means of production, but in the service of the state. There is a difference between, say, a capitalist private-owned means of ownership of production, which is in the interest of the owners, where the fascists believe that it needs to be in the interest of the state. But there's a lot of socialism. So this fascism is sort of a type of left-wingism, but often it's seen on the right because it does have that strong nationalistic. And you see, like Franco, who was a strong Catholic, saw in alliance with Mussolini, relatively not as strong as Franco, supported the Catholic Church. So Franco really did recognize that Nazi Germany was not a supporter of the church, generally speaking, and definitely not a supporter of the Catholic Church. Going to be looking into some stuff, a book on, no, not a book. I just have to record a documentary on Hitler dealing with the Pope. Their conflicts, not, their conflicts. So I want to see what that has to say. So I've already read a bunch about, in Hitler's Compromises, a bunch about the Bavarian, or, well, southern German Catholic Church's conflict with Nazism, which is often seen and was done as a very localized, regionalized thing, and not necessarily the international greater Catholic movement. So Franco was not a fan of Hitler. Mussolini, again, sometimes you can be, yeah, I'm on his side, but not like the guy, personally. So I don't know. I've not read. I don't know what Franco's thoughts on Mussolini as a person are. Obviously, as you can see here, he did meet with him, like he met with Hitler and others. And of course, Mussolini much more than Hitler did, though Hitler was at a critical time supported Franco. Hitler gave enough transport airplanes to move a bunch of his African-based Spanish Legion troops into Spain. Long-term, much more support came from Italy, including what I think about 3 divisions worth of Italian army troops wearing Italian uniforms, meaning they weren't trying to hide their involvement in the Spanish Civil War, as part of the Spanish Civil War. So they were much closer. Franco is a pragmatic, statist, traditionalist, so, a nationalist. Mussolini's a fascist, which is also an uber form of nationalism. Again, it's sort of uber nationalism with socialism. But also, we can read here, nationalist Franco in a pragmatic moves except phalangist. Serrano Suner, his Minister of Foreign Affairs, advice and joins the Axis. Mussolini has been using his influence, that should be one word, along with ours, to encourage Spain to join the fight against international communism. This will improve our relations with Portugal. Okay, and this is Suner. I'm sure I'm butchering it a bit. Now, he was a phalangist, which is basically Spanish for fascist, but the phalangists, okay, if just, again, I know a lot of you know, a fascist, not a person. I'm not talking about a person or an ideology. A fascist is a bundle of sticks or tied together with an axe as part of them, and that is a very old symbol. It goes back to Rome. They used to have guys carrying these fascists. At least early on, they were a axe with a bundle of sticks around them, and sticks. Think of the sticks as sort of like baseball bats. They're just straight sticks, but they're not as fat as baseball bats. But think of them as good heavy rods. And what they were for was when somebody breaks the law, you were punished. In the ancient world, you really didn't have jails as a long-term punishment. They're just really, life was miserable as it is. You mean you're gonna lock me up in a place that is maybe better than the street or hovel or whatever that I'm living in already, and you're going to give me free food? Oh, hey, let me go out and commit a crime. I'll do that. Give me life in a jail cell? That's much better than starving out on the street. Okay, so you see, in the ancient world, you really didn't have jail as an option in the ancient world. Not that you wouldn't lock somebody up briefly, not that there weren't a jail to like lock up somebody, but it wasn't like, oh, you were in prison for 10 years. That just didn't happen. You were, and I don't know if a Roman citizen could be made a slave, or if it was some sort of other sort of thing, but you would be potentially served as like a galley slave, you know, like a term of service. You will be sentenced to be a galley slave rowing a galley for 10 years. And so you're going to do hard labor for 10 years or something. So you could be put into, you know, a slavery, potentially for life, potentially, and I'm sure it varies, and I don't know the details, for a time frame. And this continues in the Mediterranean world for a long time. They continue to use galleys. A lot of the galley slaves, as they were called, were simply people found, men, I think exclusively, convicted of a crime. Not that there weren't other types of galley slaves, but a lot of them, and this is including into the Renaissance, you could be sentenced to be to the galleys for a specified amount of time. Often it was, even if it was 5 or 10 years, it very well still may mean a death sentence because of the lack of sanitation, the disease, and everything else. You very well may die in that time. So you may be sentenced to be a slave in the ancient world. And this is, again, I'm talking Rome. The Roman Republic starts in, goes into the Roman Empire. But to get back to the fasces, the other basic crimes were, if it was a minor sort of a crime, you were to be beaten. And I know sort of in the Legion, when they would beat people, is that they would line up in your fellow soldiers, so it was in your own unit. If you were committed of some sort of crime, maybe sleeping on duty, or I don't know, maybe stealing, though some of them may have a more severe thing. Line up 2 lines on either side, give each guy a stick from the fasces, and you would be slowly walked down between these things, between these 2 lines, as people beat you on your back, more or less. Meant to be very painful. Generally not, I don't think, meant to break bones, but to be very injurious and painful of a crime. Corporal punishment, if you will. Corpus, the body, punishment. The axe was basically meant to cut your head off if you were convicted of a crime to the degree that it was a death sentence. And again, I don't know Roman legal whether stealing was just a corporal punishment or a death sentence, you know, where murdering somebody, I'm sure, especially if it's the right type of people, would be sentenced to death. And so that's what a fascist is a bundle of these sticks or rods, wooden rods, with an axe as part of them. You will note that it's a very old and often used classical reference. If you look at the U.S. House of Representatives, I was trying to remember whether it was the Senate or the House of Representatives, but maybe it's the Senate, but I think it's the House of Representatives. On either side of where the main sort of speakers, you can see it, and all go and look at all of, like, when the president or whoever, you know, video speaking, and it's up there permanently. On either side of sort of where the main speaker is are 2 fascists. Fascines. Well, fascines are bundles of sticks that you throw into a ditch to get across a ditch, but which has the same sort of Latin origin. But they have 2 fascists on either side, to this day, and it was there long before Mussolini was ever born, and it's still there through the fascist period. And I noticed they do have a fairly significant statue in London to George Washington that was put there many years ago, I think in the late 19th century. And it has George Washington sort of standing but leaning a little bit on a fascist. The rods and the axe as his symbol. So they're using, because it's again often used and seen as a Republican, and I don't mean Republican as a Republican Party, but as a republic, like the Republicans of the Spanish Civil War, as a republic, a Republican symbol of authority, as opposed to a crown as a royal symbol of authority. So they have George Washington in his 18th century clothing on a bronze statue leaning against a fascist. So fascist has a much deeper meaning, and although generally not added to things, you can see them on some of the coins in modern day use because of the association with Mussolini and his fascist, because he's just drawing upon that same Roman authority symbol. And so, but it hasn't been nearly as discredited as the swastika. So if you're cautious, if you sort of use it appropriately, you can still use the fascist without saying that you are a fascist politically. It's the sort of Republican, and again, not a party Republican, but idea of Republican thing. So now and that's basic. Phalange is basically Spanish for fascist. So they're using more or less the same words, but from my understanding of, and it's just limited because again, I don't read Spanish, and so I just read what people translate and describe, so I may not be getting everything 100%, because I definitely read a lot more fascist literature. The Phalangists weren't quite as fascist as the fascists were, but they were a fascist-like party, and Franco had fascist, one of them being his foreign minister, in his government, or Phalangists in his government. He also had monarchists in his government. I don't know if both flavors of the Spanish monarchists, the Carlists and the Bourbonists, though they're both, it goes back to, I don't entirely understand all the details, but it goes back to which version of the Bourbon monarchy, and because one branch of the Bourbon monarchy was discredited because it sided with the French Revolution at first. I'm not sure how much of that was just pure opportunism, or whether they really just saw also the sort of corrupt element within the mainly, I think, the sort of French aristocracy, and how Louis XIV had set it up and it got more and more corrupt. Basically, nobles didn't pay taxes, so the tax burden went to the unnobles. And so if a noble owned a business, or a noble owned land, or noble owned whatever, all that land and money stopped being taxed by the government. So the tax burden more and more, not necessarily always on the poor, but it definitely made and affected the poor, but the tax burden went to the unnobled in France. And so I don't know how much that is, but came out in support. Again, I don't want to say exactly who. King's brother, the king's cousin, sorry, I think Louis Philippe supported the French Revolution at first, before the beheadings, and they were eventually killed by the French Revolution, turned on them, but supported the French Revolution as a reform element, but maybe they were being a bit more cynical and just trying to see that as a wave of maintaining power. But supported the French Revolution, and of course it goes dark for all the monarchists and all the aristocratic types in France. So that train of Bourbonism is discredited with some of the Bourbonists because they see it as a betrayal. And so that affects, including in France to this day, because there's two Bourbonist claimants to the French throne. One from each of the branches of the family, and then of course there's also the Bonapartists, monarchist claim to the French throne. So whether you want a French Empire or the French monarchy, depends on which one. There is a similar, because the crown comes into Spain, and there's a similar sort of split with the French, and or with the Spanish monarchists. But see, Mussolini wasn't able to get rid of all of the supporters in government that were monarchists. I forget, and I don't know right offhand the title of the monarchist party within the Conservative Party or whatever. The conservative, not right wing, the Conservative Party within Italy at the time. He did get out of government all of the leftist parties and sort of democratic liberalist type parties, but he wasn't, because the army was still in essence a royal institution. It was still the king, so the right wing conservative element, he wasn't able to get out of the legislatures, at least in Italy, where, as opposed to Franco, was trying to build a coalition of phalangists, of traditional landowner types, of monarchists, of ultra Catholic types with church support, and trying to build if you will, a right wing coalition within Spain. So instead of Mussolini is trying to get a fascist state that is all unified under one political vision under Mussolini and his fascist viewpoint, Franco is a nationalist and trying to protect things that he finds important, one of them being the Catholic Church. And you got to realize, leading up to, and then it gets even worse during the Spanish Civil War, but even before the Spanish Civil War breaks out, you have the cases of various left-wing groups, and which I mean anarchist, communist, whatever various flavors, going into things like into a nunnery or into a monastery, where monks are, and killing everybody. People that in essence had no real political power, weren't the dominant. They were just killing them because that they were seen as supporting God, and these were anti-religious types, and so that were tacitly approved of by the Republican governments in regions, and that may be a little bit more regional than the national Republican government. So Franco sees all this going on and this reaction, so he wants to protect it. So some of what Franco is for is protecting things that he sees important, the Spanish state, the Catholic Church, but also what motivates Franco is what he's against, particularly communism, also anarchism and syndicalism and a bunch of other isms out there. He was also very, very much against Freemasonry, whatever that. He sort of got that into his little. Actually, there's actually sort of displays that date from his period of time of the evils of Freemasonry. But so it's also what he's against, and so where he agrees with Hitler in his crusade against Bolshevism, he is happy to support Hitler with the Blue Division and some pilots and other things, and happy to do trading with Germany for resources and things like that. Happy to do that because he sees Hitler, not that he likes him, I know this is going a bit long for all this, but not that he likes Hitler, but that he sees greater dangers in international communism. And so then of course he also wants things like Gibraltar and other stuff. So I very much looked at this and go, I don't want to make it super easy for Franco to always just join Germany when I was making some of this stuff. But I see it like I see this situation as a possibility. So that's one of the pictures I found of the foreign minister, Franco, and Mussolini together. And so I also sort of picture this more as, even though it was Germany who was doing the influencing here, more as Franco joining with Italy than Franco joining with Hitler, sort of a greater Mediterranean alliance, if you will. And then I've collected bunches of image. This was a medal, a pin for like a suit, not like anything official, but to sort of show Axis support in Spain from the time. Obviously, you see, I don't know who made this. I could almost say it was Japan because the Japanese flag is in the center, but both the Italian and I think it's, and I may have the somewhere where I found it from, but I think it may be Spanish in origin, just because they get the Japanese do a very, very bad job with Italian flags in their sort of propaganda. But it's interesting that Germany doesn't have the place in the center, though they do have Manchukuo over here, I think mostly to balance it out. But I thought that was interesting. Now, I also figure that, as we saw earlier, Portugal, even though it had been influenced enough to join us, wasn't going to join us because it had been in an alliance with Spain. So I very much also, and if you know, Salazar wrote a book that was an anti-Hitler book, anti the Nuremberg laws. So Portugal's dictator, who did sort of have a even a more fascist light type movement behind him, very much hated Hitler and hated Nazism. Again, enough to publish a book on it, and I mean a real book, not a booklet, a book on it. And this was in the 30s. It's one of the events, if you remember, earlier in this series of Salazar's book. So Portugal does not want to be part of the Axis or of Nazism, and is traditionally been a British ally. And they are very weak, so I don't want them to join it. But if Spain does join the Axis, I figure, from talking to people, Spain would have a lot of influence over Portugal. It had a slightly high influence from talking to people in Cuba at this time, as well as in Argentina and Uruguay. I figure those were some of the more still Spanish somewhat influenced, so we get improved relations there. Now, of course, right now Cuba is at war with us, so it doesn't really help us that way. Okay, that's my talk on Spain. Now, Atlantic Wall, Southwest France, Mein Führer, would you like? Okay. We have 4,000. We have 57,000, so we have it. It's just money. We're going to do light defenses, cover the border down here a little bit. So, there we go. Now, the one problem with any of these things is that if you do not garrison them, and they are invaded, you are absolutely giving the invaders a fort to immediately hold. To hold against a counter attack. So keep that in mind, because unlike the events here that just target ports, the likely places that, at least particularly as the Germans saw it, as invasion possibilities, that you're probably also already holding down here. What else do we have out here? We'll send organization tote just to be something to hold that. If you don't garrison these and they're invaded, you are in more trouble than if you didn't. So let's just do a little bit of spreading out here. Yeah, I don't want these guys to be cut off by having that taken. So just keep that in mind, that maybe you don't want to fortify down here. Maybe you do. Okay. Well, let's see. SS Gerb Division orders to board. We're going to wait on upgrading this because you're being useful down here. And you won't just be upgraded in place, which we can wait for that. The reason it's happening now is they're not in combat, although they are advancing. So. Okay. But definitely something that I would want to do. Okay, if we weren't in an immediate operation. Okay, now that we have this island, come on, come on. Okay, just trying to click somewhere. Let's increase the port, increase the air power. We want to do just a pillbox in here to help in case there's a counterattack. We want to throw up air defenses again if they try to counterattack, and I want to put a couple of radars because that's part of the reason to grab this is simply to put good radar out here to better spot enemy actions. So that's sort of, and also to base air power out of, all that good stuff, and potentially to base invasion fleets to get over here. But we've just taken out a Brazilian defensive unit here. We see this here, so we could easily see the idea, at least, of an invasion from Brazil or some other place. So I don't know, they may be a bit shot up for naval. No, no, that was just Mars over us. Oh, bunch of events, okay. We've won there, good. Battleship armor has advanced. Okay, we're gonna stop that, that's good enough. I don't think I need Uber armor. What, okay, yeah, so it's at 4 now, and that's sort of where we need to be. Let's, look here, just so that I know and you know. Okay, Veteran Navy, of course, is just enough naval battles. We need 2 more, and then we get, but, naval builder, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Okay. We are a continental military power. To get this, they wanted global military power, and when you could, and the reason I think it's still here is it does make some sense, but to become some of these things, it was too easy because they wanted a number of ships was something, but you could build those motor torpedo boats and just spam them out. So now, okay, so we need to do strategic bombardment tactics, air doctrine, to get that to at least 3. A battleship armor, okay, 4. Capital ship gun, 5. The aircraft carriers and carrier group technology. Okay, so the next we're going to shift to strategic bombardment tactics. I think we're way behind on that. So if we ever want to get that, and then to weak superpower, we have to even do the armor more, and so it's sort of a way. So that's sort of pushing us into naval if we're going to do that. I'd at least like to get the next level. Of course, that may mean that once I get that, yes, here. So we're at 1. We need to get a couple more higher, so we will do that. Just 2. Pretty good. Okay, the 18th Artillery Division. This first purely artillery division was intended to be an independent, movable, powerful force. Was to be created within something unpronounceable, Ausstellungsbefehls. Okay. From the 7th of September 43 by the Oberkommando the Heers, in executing a Weisung by Hitler himself. Is that an order? I don't know. This was based upon the estimated necessity for its use as a strong point weapon both in attack and defense. An infantry assault gun company and an armored observation detachment were assigned. In addition to all normal artillery units, the organization had its own infantry rifle battalion. This unit had the mission of infantry defense in all dangerous situations. In the course of the ensuing battles, this battalion saved the division from total destruction no less than 3 times, and from partial destruction numerous times. It was thoroughly trained in rearguard actions, so that it could plug any breakthrough for a short period of time. Per General Thothel. Okay. Yeah. What do I want to say about this? In some ways, this is a good idea. And I will see what the well, let's see what it is. We'll go yes instead of having the picture up while we talk. I don't know, is it in the production queue or on the map? There's the Danish People's Unit. So it's in the production queue, it looks like. Yes. Okay, well that's okay. So yeah, there's the Sturmgeschütz, some heavy artillery, some flak. Let's move this to the top. This is obviously a very unbalanced division, and I don't know how spammy or min-maxy it is compared to other divisions, because sometimes, and trust me, the Black Ice teams works very hard when it identifies things that are super min-max, that are skewing things out from historical reality. They try to correct it. In reality, to have this as a coherent fighting force that is designed to hold the line, be a frontline unit, I think is a very bad idea. Now, if it's designed to be a division in the sense of administrative and support elements of an organized other subunits, meaning if it's has a division commander and a division support staff that streams supplies to different artillery battalions, artillery companies, artillery batteries, as an organizational thing, and make sure they have enough food, enough transport, and all that. That is a good thing, and it can be a very good thing. So the concept of that, and that it, if used, to like attach it to a corps, and then that corps commander assigns pieces as the battle develops to different divisions within it. We'll switch this artillery regiment from supporting this division to supporting another division. That kind of thing, in my mind, works very well, because it becomes really actually rather hard that if you assign an artillery regiment to a division, to pull it away from that division in future, because it's that division commander's unit, as part of his division. But if you just, I'm talking about giving it to the division. But if you just say, oh, well, this division, this unit is now tasked with supporting you for now, that's just a temporary thing that you can pull away in moments' notice and do that. That, in that sense, to me, it would work very well. So if it's used as that, so it depends on how you're using it, because assault guns, and they very much, as the war continued, were seen as a fire brigade, as a defense against breakthroughs. and they worked very well for that. But if you just have a battalion of infantry and not a regiment, and definitely not 3 regiments like you sort of theoretically should for a German division, you're really weakening the ability of a division to hold and function on the line. And and again, as I talked about, the division commander commands his division, and it's quite common in a lot of the armies to temporarily assign other supporting units to a division for a specific task, time, duration, whatever. And so he will operate his units. And generally speaking, the way, and I'm pretty sure the German army did this, but this is the way I was trained, every unit, whether it's a platoon, a company, a battalion, a regiment, a brigade, a division, will have lines drawn on the map. One of them, or one set of them, would be the right and left flanks, that you don't leave this part of the front, because the problem is if you go too far to the right or too far to the left, you can start interfering with the other unit over there. Now you need to coordinate where those lines are and what you do between them, but if you start moving your units over into the other stuff, you can really mess up and screw up things. And in the way that the enemy may sort of see long range, barely through the binoculars or something, some trucks up there, and absolutely know for certain that they can't be any of their trucks, because there's no trucks up there, and they're just sort of camouflage trucks up there, and they'll start putting artillery fire on it when it's a unit from the other division. So the sort of right and left stop lines, if you will, and I know there's a term I'm forgetting for it, but so if you keep the units from becoming intermixed, and they do that within divisions, and these lines will change all the time. It's not like any sort of permanent line, but it's sort of known lines, and divisional lines would be much more defined. Now, of course, we can find where divisions cross over and reality and all kinds of stuff, but it does cause chaotic moments. So to have a division so if you give them a bit of the front line, the other divisions around them aren't going to really respond to an enemy thrust, and if all you have is a single battalion of infantry to hold however much of the line that you may be given it, is going to be really bad. Now, it's a different matter to go a little bit light on infantry, to say, oh, well, we're only going to have 2 brigades or 2 regiments or whatever of infantry instead of 3, so that it's going to be a little bit lighter but go super heavy on the artillery. That would be a little different matter, of course. Okay, supplies for Crete. Not at this time. Agricultural industry supplies food that's essential. Industrial farms, lose some money, gain a bunch of supplies. Ooh, gain the manpower. Yes, please. New industry for the nation now available. Have we ever built this? We're going to save our money. Okay, form Panzer Division Norwegian. The Panzer Division Norwegian was formed in October 1943 from the staff of Panzer Brigade 21 and elements of the 25th Panzer Division. It was used to reform the 25th Panzer Division in June of 1944, and some elements were used to form Panzer Brigade Norwegian. Okay, so if we do this, we get Panzer Division Norwegian. Okay, nice picture of, those are Panzer IIIs, late model Panzer IIIs, with the L24 75mm gun. That which is the standard gun for the Panzer IV at the start. It's the short-barreled one that you're used to seeing. The Panzer IIIs, as time went on, for a design tank, was very, very well designed. Very good. It didn't have all the good sloping armor as time went on that you could have, but It was automotively, crew-wise, the 5-man crew layout, all that. It was a very good tank. It was designed originally size-wise to be able to handle a 50 millimeter gun. Obviously, the guns the Army put on it were 37 millimeters, upgrade with 2 different upgrades to a medium length and then a long length 50 millimeter gun. Well, Germany at I forget the exact point, late 42, early 43. No, I think it was more in 42. They developed a hollow charge shell, which is now quite common, a heat shell. High explosive anti-tank is what the HEAT stands for. And it's designed to, instead of just put a shell out there, and again, I know most of you know this, put a shell out there and that will hit something and then blow up. And that's what the Panzer IV design was, just to put a shell out there, hits and blows up, to blow up in a concrete bunker, or to blow up a heavy sandbag and wood and earth bunkers, or to blow up a house. That, hey, there's a machine gun team in a brick house, let's just put a 75 millimeter gun in there, round in there, where a 37 would maybe do it but not do it so well. You wanted to do it well, just one shot, boom, it blows up the house, if you will, that they put a machine gun in it, and that kind of thing. That was found to not be that effective against tanks. But they developed this heat shell through the I'm forgetting the guy's effect, but the guy's name, that would, in an inverse cone, that would create a, if you will, sort of a molten jet of explosive kind of heat that would melt through armor. And so they did this about the time that they were discontinuing all of the 24 mil, the L24 gun of the 75 millimeter. The Germans found, oh great, this is great, we can now use this gun. Now, a lot of the guns that were pulled out of the Panzer IVs and were being, as time went on, and upgraded to the longer guns, those guns were mounted in the armored half-tracks, the 251s, as a support gun in for a half-track unit. But they also realized that the Panzer III could not hold the longer, higher velocity gun. It just, the recoil of the gun, in a practical sense, I'm not going to swear that you couldn't theoretically mount it in the turret, but in a practical sense, it could not hold the bigger gun. But it could just barely be made with some, I don't know if you can see it really well in this picture, but the mantlet is sort of extended out further, sort of rebalanced a bit. Part of that is something I'll talk about in a minute, but is just sort of rebalancing the mantlet, get it out there. Could do that, and with these heat rounds, it could be effective against a T-34. If you can get in a good shot, it'd be effective against the T-34. Now, as the Germans, and often our armies will do this, there's nothing particular about the Germans, but the Germans saw how great these heat rounds were that they had developed and got into use. And I don't know whether the Allies got them first and they copied them. I don't know the story on that, but the heat rounds, they go, oh well, yeah, well, everybody's going to start using these, so we need to put spaced armor around all these tanks. So you can see here where the machine gun is, it's sort of indented because they've added a piece of armor that's, oh, I don't know, 4-6 inches sticking out from the regular armor. They've wrapped armor around the tank turret that does have little doors in it, so you can use the previous existing doors there. And of course the Schützen, which these are sort of called Schützen armor, the armor on the sides, which of course made it incredibly difficult to change the tracks and work on the tracks. You could take these off. Now, most all of these additional armors were not armor steel. It was just soft steel, if you will, unarmored. And it was fairly thin. So it really didn't protect against a high velocity round coming in. I'm not saying it didn't help at all, because obviously a little thicker steel helped. But in a practical sense, it really didn't stop a high velocity round in any significant way if it was already going to be penetrating your armor. The Germans just thought that, hey, well, everybody, since we're using these new rounds, everybody else is going to be using these new rounds. So they sort of jumped on this bandwagon and started putting it around a lot of their tanks. Now, the Soviets, I don't know if they ever used heat rounds in their guns. I just don't know, quite honestly. And again, I don't know how much the Allies used them, but and what the Soviets did not use in any numbers, I just don't know whether none were sent or just never found pictures of them, was the bazooka. Where the Allies did use the bazooka, and these would be, the standoff heat round would be very, very effective against bazookas. So the light anti-tank rockets, because it used a heat round effect. Because yes, I know the Allies knew what heat rounds were. Oh, the Monroe effect. It's called the Monroe effect because Monroe, an engineer or whatever, came up with developed the inverse cone type principle. But you definitely knew about it and definitely developed heat rounds. I just don't know how much they used them, say, in the Shermans versus high explosive versus just simply a penetrator round with maybe a bursting charge or something in it. Because what the Germans also did prior to this, and continuing to do it, they did it very well, though the Allies eventually got, the Americans particularly, I'm thinking, eventually got better, is that they had a round that was not quite a solid shot, but was a hardened front face shot that would come in at a very high velocity, penetrate, but had a fuse on it that was timed just milliseconds or whatever, so that the idea is not to explode on impact, it was to impact, punch through, and then explode on the inside. So definitely not a heat round in that it used kinetic energy to punch through the armor, but instead of punching a clean hole that might go, say, through the turret, maybe killing the gunner and the commander, say, but not much affecting the machine gunner / radio operator, the driver, or the loader or something, just because it's more or less straight through it. Yes, there would be some spalling, yes, there could be other damage, but the idea is to put the round in there and then explode it to put more shrapnel, more explosive power inside as well, inside the crew compartment, as well as try to explode other ammunition in there to just get the tank going boom, as opposed to just penetrating and doing damage. The Germans did that very well, and that's what they had been doing before these heat round things that they developed. So the Germans very much, everybody's going to be doing this now because this is such a wonderful idea. Yeah, not maybe as much. Another example of that is the Zimmermann. The Germans developed a magnetic mine that basically you had the guy who was used for the infantry, that was designed to, you'd run up next to a tank, stick this onto a tank, pull a cord, and run away from it, which moments later it would be another sort of Monroe effect of a heat round kind of thing. It was an inverse cone to explode into the tank, to be an anti-tank device, and they got this to use. And I don't know about you, but I don't really want to run up next to a tank. I'd much rather use a bazooka or a Panzerfest or something like that. Much better. But so that they developed this anti-tank mine that they thought was going to be good. And so they saw, well, hey, somebody else is going to make these wonderful, great things and use against us, because the Soviets did do a lot of suicide-type attacks against tanks of various types. They must also be going to develop this, or they're going to, once they see us using it, they're going to get a copy of it and copy it. So they created this Zimmermann paste that they would put on the outside of their tanks for a while. They stopped later on because once they figured out nobody else cared, so they stopped doing it. But and so you sort of see like a waffle patterns on the tanks, and that's this paste that they put on, and then they would sort of scrape lines in it up and down, create the, like I said, the waffle pattern. And it was designed to be rough, so it was sort of a little bit harder to get something like a magnetic mine to attach. But mainly it was a paste that was to make stuff less magnetic, so it wouldn't stick well. So these magnetic mines wouldn't stick well. So that was all the rage for a while within the German army to do to their tanks. And then after a while, they figured out nobody was using magnetic mines. So just as a, oh, well, we need to produce faster, they stopped doing the Zimmermann at the sort of at the end of the war in 45 or some point. So yes, we'll take this. And here we have this. Okay, well, we need a commander for it. I've often wondered whatever happened to the Nuart tanks. At least some of them were sent to, well, let's maybe be a defensive unit, so let's give it to him. They were sent to Norway for a while, sort of for propaganda reasons, and those are the multi-turreted tanks that the Germans had. The sort of super heavy. That had a 75mm and a 30, and this again shows you that for a while the 37mm gun, unlike in War Thunder and some of the other things, actually penetrated the armor better because the gun had coaxially. One model had it, the 37mm gun in the same turret, but on top of the 75mm gun. I think maybe also a little bit for ammo storage, carrying more 37mm rounds, but that the 37mm gun was to kill tanks, the 75 was to kill bunkers. The other model had them parallel to each other. That actually worked a little better, and a little shorter turrets. And then they had two Panzer I turrets, one on one side sort of forward, the one on the other side sort of behind the turret to shoot infantry running around. I think they're great tanks for their philosophy, in that they worked well, just they were big heavy tanks that had very thin armor, so you could penetrate them with other armor very easily. So in that sense they didn't work so very well. But I've never found out what happened to them. Some of them, like I say, were I think they made 6 total, 3 of each type, you know, one with the gun on tops of each other and the other one with parallel. I think 3 of them were sent to Norway, photographed heavily there, like in 1940, for propaganda reasons. I just never found what happened to them. Were they left in Norway? Were they cannibalized? Were they used in, you know, were they melted down? Did they use them in occupation duties? I still don't know what. Why is that just hanging there? I don't know. Part of that. Okay. Yes, you attack here up to here. You attack there. You attack there. You support the attack. Okay, this episode has gone on long enough. I really do appreciate you watching, and I do appreciate you liking the videos if you would. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And of course, I really want to hear from you. So if you have anything even mildly interesting to say, or have any questions, comments, suggestions, corrections, please post them. Love hearing from you. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.